What wisdom did you get in the process of talking about quarterbacks that helps you clarify this battle a little bit that we're going to get between JJ and Kyler?
Yeah, I did talk to two former Minnesota Vikings quarterbacks, Sage Rosenfels and Brad Johnson, two guys who know a thing or two about battling for their spots and some OGs in Vikings lore. But, both guys, talked about the stress and the strain of going through a quarterback battle. And, Kyler Murray kind of alluded to it in the spring where he told us the hardest part was for his entire life, he's been the guy that's gotten all of the first team reps. He won the Heisman Trophy in college and then was the number 1 overall draft pick. No one ever questioned, is Kyler Murray QB1? And then all of a sudden, he's having to share these reps. And every single day, you're going out there feeling like I have to be perfect at practice. And Sage Rosenfels, who backed up Brett Favre, said Brett had so much fun in practice, right? Because no one ever questioned whether he was the starter, where as opposed to every single rep, when something goes wrong, you're thinking about the coaching points and what they're going to say after and what they're going to see on your tape. And Brad Johnson even mentioned, did he call me Brad or did he just say quarterback? Like that's the mental tax, I think, that goes into having a quarterback battle. I think there is a question in this particular instance with Kyler Murray and JJ McCarthy of how much of a quarterback battle is it? I think one guy probably has a lot more stress than the other guy going into this training camp, with JJ McCarthy has to feel like he's chasing from pretty far behind with, the Vikings going out and getting someone who's been a starting quarterback for their entire career. But, I think for both guys, it's very uncomfortable territory. Like, when was JJ McCarthy ever really challenged as a sophomore in college? Maybe was the last time, and then he wins the national championship. The team moves on from Sam Darnold to anoint him as QB1, and then here we are 1 year later, he's battling for his job. So, both guys have said that they're comfortable being uncomfortable in this situation, but I would say there's a lot on the line for both of them.
You wrote the book Football is a Numbers Game, like Fitzy alluded to. We brought you in earlier. What number will ultimately tell the story of this quarterback battle?
Yeah, I think that's the thing about a quarterback battle, right? Is that, priors do have to matter quite a bit when we analyze this. Last year, out of 45 quarterbacks or so that threw a significant amount of passes in the NFL, JJ McCarthy ranked 42nd in quarterback rating. And if you pretty much go across the metrics for him, if you look back at the first 10 starts of Christian Ponder's career, he has the same quarterback rating as JJ McCarthy. And I know there's a lot of different stats that we can use to analyze quarterbacks, but McCarthy had one of the more concerning starts to a career. And had he been playing for a team like Cam Ward, that, the Tennessee Titans, who are totally rebuilding, you might say, all right, well, give it more time and so forth. But he also really struggled to get the ball to Justin Jefferson. And I think that when you build an entire offense around the best wide receiver in the NFL, or at least the most talented, last year didn't have the best numbers, but when you build your entire offense around Justin Jefferson and then your starting quarterback struggles as much as JJ McCarthy did to get him the ball, he has to go a really, really long way to prove that he deserves to be the quarterback, because that's where everything starts with your offense. And the other, numbers that I've been looking a lot into with Kyler Murray is just how good was his supporting cast throughout his career in Arizona. I mean, the coaching is one thing that's been highlighted with Cliff Kingsbury, and then they hire an inexperienced coach in Jonathan Gannon. But when he had DeAndre Hopkins, he was very successful, and when he was throwing to Trey McBride, he was very successful. But they drafted Marvin Harrison Jr. to be the next great star receiver in the NFL, and that never really came to fruition while Kyler Murray was there. I think what the bet is here on Kyler Murray is, in 2024, he was a solid quarterback. PFF ranked him as the 12th best quarterback in the league. If you bring him here with this group of weapons and this coaching, I think the idea is that we will see the best version of Kyler Murray. And that's why when we call it a competition, I kind of compare it to a NASCAR race where one person has the pole position, the other person's in 38th place, but you never know. Like, the person in 38th place can certainly win the race, but he's just got a lot harder road to actually get there.
So that being said, if we get the best of both of these quarterbacks and all of a sudden we're in a situation where they both look incredible, What's best for the Vikings? Which quarterback offers more hope for the team?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're talking about in training camp and they have the exact same training camp and the coaches are thrilled with both quarterbacks, then Kyler Murray's going to start. Because last year I covered every training camp practice, stood out there in the sun, tracked every JJ McCarthy pass, and we walked out of training camp thinking, yeah, this should be pretty good. And you know what? We were wrong. It was not good. And that tells you about training camp too. I mean, they don't have two-a-days. They don't have tackling. I mean, you try to take as much as you possibly can. And of course, the coaches know a lot more than us, but I mean, this is not a simulation of actual football. And with the fact that Murray has had highs in his career, he's not been consistent through his career, but he has had those high moments. I mean, it does bring you back a little bit to Sam Darnold came here with experience in the NFL, but had not put together great seasons yet and then won 14 games with the Vikings. Whereas with JJ McCarthy, I mean, there's still enough questions. And this is a veteran team. This is a team that expects to win. It's a head coach that, like, you missed the playoffs and let the Super Bowl champion quarterback go. There's a lot of pressure here. So I think you're much more apt to go with the guy that you brought in to be the veteran quarterback to run your offense and who's done it at a high level before. But the best thing for the Vikings franchise would be if JJ McCarthy blew away Kyler Murray. He was absolutely awesome. He looked like the next great quarterback in the NFL. And then they could go right back to where they expected to be. And there's a short-term part of that, which is, hey, we were actually right about JJ McCarthy. But the long-term would be he's still on his rookie contract. And if Kyler Murray plays really well, you're going to have to pay him, which kind of puts you back in that difficult spot of having a real good quarterback, but maybe not necessarily a great quarterback who's making a lot of money. And that is a difficult place to be in the NFL.
We've seen the renaissances of so many quarterback careers recently. If you just leave a bad situation and go to a better one, all of a sudden they look like different quarterbacks. Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, just a couple of examples. Do you think that there is a possibility that Kyler Murray just didn't have enough talent around him in a bad situation in Arizona, and coming to Minnesota may fix that?
Yeah, I think that there are realities about Kyler Murray that are rooted in his height. And as somebody who grew up in Buffalo watching Doug Flutie, you wanted to work with these undersized playmaking type of guys, but there are things that impact Kyler Murray. I mean, if he faces rush up the middle and tries to throw with guys kind of in his face, you're talking about having trouble seeing the field at 5'10.5", maybe with his shoes on. There is challenges that exist there, but I think that if Kevin O'Connell and the supporting cast can even out some of the ups and downs, because when you look at Murray's entire career, when you have guys that scramble and try to make plays all the time, we see this from Caleb Williams, there's ups and downs to that. You'll have 1 week where he's the best quarterback in the NFL and all the scrambling and all the risky throws, they work. And then you'll have other weeks where none of it works and you lose because of your quarterback play. I think what Kevin O'Connell's goal is going to be is to even out some of that. Get Kyler Murray to play on time, in rhythm, get the ball out of his hands. And in 2024 with Arizona, not that anyone had any reason to be watching the Arizona Cardinals in 2024, Kyler Murray was one of the more effective quarterbacks at getting rid of the ball in 2.5 seconds or less, which I think showed a little proof of concept. He played under center a lot more, ran a lot more play actions under center, and those are things that Kevin O'Connell wants to do. There's always going to be that Kyler Murray wants to make plays. He's going to bail on open receivers sometimes to scramble and try to do something special, which I'm not sure you can coach that out of him. That's been who he is since he was one of the best players in the history of Texas high school football. But at the same time, you have such great weapons. TJ Hawkinson, I think, could be a guy that he leans on quite a bit as a tight end. Kirk Cousins did the same thing with underneath routes when you have Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison going over the top. But he's never had a supporting cast that looks like this. There were some good teams with DeAndre Hopkins and the late AJ Green career there in Arizona. but not when we're talking about the best receiver in the NFL, Jordan Addison, who is a very solid number 2. And then the Vikings made a kind of a subtle signing in bringing in Jawan Jennings for a number 3 wide receiver. He has 132 catches over the last 2 years. So this is a great supporting cast for him. And for Kyler, it's basically, if you can't do it here, you probably can't be an above average starter anywhere. But I think he has been at times throughout his career. It's just been not with a relevant team and with a franchise that has really struggled to build a complete roster around him.
So with all that being said, a lot of the benefit of the doubt we give the Vikings comes from the fact that we all believe that KOC is just an incredible quarterback whispering head coach. He's also the coach that saw Sam Darnold and decided he didn't need Sam Darnold. And then we watched Sam Darnold perform elsewhere while the quarterback position has fallen apart. Is there some pressure in your mind on KOC to get it right?
Yeah, I think there's an enormous amount of pressure on KOC to get it right. And look, I mean, Kevin O'Connell loved Sam Darnold. He loved working with Sam Darnold. And when teams asked about potentially signing him, Kevin O'Connell was the first one to stand up and say, yes, Seattle, you should sign Sam Darnold. So it wasn't like he was against Sam Darnold, because these decisions don't happen in a vacuum. In order to get Sam to stay with Minnesota, they would have had to have franchise tagged him, which would have cost $41 million on the salary cap in this giant immovable object, which would have made it very difficult for them to build a good enough team. Now, I'm not saying they made the right decision. Of course they did not, but there were more factors that went into it, and they really believed in what they saw in JJ McCarthy. But that's the thing about a quarterback like McCarthy is I think that Kevin O'Connell thought, if we put everything around him, we set it up all perfect, I call the plays in a certain way, that he'll just learn on the fly and it'll be fine with McCarthy. Like halfway through the season, he'll get it, it'll click, and we'll be a great team. And that just didn't happen, in part because there's like the law of unintended consequences or things that you can't see coming. And McCarthy getting hurt in week 2 was one of those things you couldn't see coming. He missed 5 straight weeks, and then it sort of seemed to reset all of his technical throwing elements and his accuracy and things like that they had liked during training camp. But this is a quarterback who only threw 717 passes in college and then missed his entire first year with a knee injury and didn't get to practice and didn't get to improve. So I think that they believed in themselves too much and believed in the quarterback whisper thing too much and the weapons too much, and just assumed that everything would go the same way as 2024. So when that happens, when you make a cataclysmic decision for your franchise, yeah, there's going to be a lot of pressure on Kevin O'Connell. I think at the same time, though, when you look at the bigger picture of O'Connell, when he had either Kirk Cousins or Sam Darnold as his starting quarterback, they are 31-11. And I mean, I think that speaks to Kyler Murray's chances, but it also speaks to when he gets a certain level of quarterback play, they win a lot of football games. At the same time, this ownership has not tolerated coaches missing the playoffs. Mike Zimmer missed 2 years in a row. He was let go. Les Frazier missed 1 year. He was let go. Go back to Brad Childress in 2010 after going to the NFC Championship game with Favre. He was fired. So, I mean, the NFL has realities, right? That owners do not sit around and act too patiently. But I think overall, if you're doing sort of a process over results, Kevin O'Connell is one of the better coaches in the NFL. So if you're going to judge it on this one season, you have to be very careful with that, because the grass is not always greener with other coaches. And I'll give you a little factoid on that. Kevin O'Connell and Todd Bowles are the only coaches from the 2022 hiring cycle that included 10 new hires that still have their jobs today. And Todd Bowles, I would say, is pretty well on the hot seat as well. So do you really want to be hiring and firing and changing up your entire culture and everything else? Probably not. But at the same time, I mean, you got to make the playoffs, man, with Kyler Murray in probably the toughest division in all football.
So how much concern is there for you or amongst Vikings fans that if Justin Jefferson doesn't have a big year, if the Vikings don't figure out the quarterback position, that eventually he'll get disgruntled and want out?
Yeah, I mean, last year was pretty incredible with Justin Jefferson and the way that he handled everything. We gave him our Media Good Guy of the Year award because every week he had to come out and answer all the questions for his quarterback throwing the ball 10 feet over his head. And it was a real challenging year for Justin Jefferson, because one thing I know about him is he wants to be in Canton. He wants to set records. He wants to be considered the greatest wide receiver to ever play. I think we all have Jerry Rice in the number one spot, but that's who Justin is chasing. And he has more yards by his age than any other wide receiver in NFL history. So that's where he's setting the bar for himself. And if you feel like your team cannot get the quarterback position solved and it's hurting your ability to be one of the greatest of all time, which of course he has all the talent to be able to do that, then I think, yeah, frustration would go along with pretty much anyone. But the way that contracts are set up these days allows even more for Justin Jefferson to potentially try to ask out if this doesn't work. I don't know if that's something that he would ever want to do, but contracts are generally set up to have lower cap hits in the early years and then get super expensive at the end of the contract, which is where you negotiate an extension, right? So Jefferson now has fallen behind some of the other higher paid receivers. He's in line to get an extension after this year, and they need him to do that in order to lower his gigantic cap hits. So you've sort of reached a fork in the road with Jefferson. It's either you're going to sign an extension with this team, stay with them long-term, lock yourself in, probably Minnesota Viking for life. I know how much he admires Larry Fitzgerald and the fact that he was with one franchise for his entire career. I think that's what Justin Jefferson absolutely wants. He's very close with Kevin O'Connell. They've built a great relationship through the years. But I mean, if you're talking about another year of inaccurate passes, frustrations, not competing for the playoffs, the fact that the best wide receiver in football has 0 playoff wins to this point is not a fact that is lost on Justin Jefferson, I don't think. So it is a really, really important year for him and the organization.